my screen. Okay, cool. So let's say. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make, what is this function called? Who's special, right? And we're going to set that equal to a function. Now what who's special is going to take in is, it's going to take in a special pets, which is, oh wait. Now special pets is, what is this thing supposed to be? Special pets is an array. So special pets is an array, so what we're going to do is we're going to loop through this special pets array. We're going to pull out specific like properties from the objects that are inside of them, because it's an array of objects. We're going to construct a sentence for each pet because each object represents one pet, and then we're going to add it into a sentence. However, let's think about this. How can we do this? So there's multiple ways that we can do this. We can have like a result string and just add things to that result string. Or we could take advantage of some methods and push everything into arrays, right? Because we could just push one string into an array, and at the end we can just join it all together, right? So I'm going to do the, which way should I do it? I'll do it the array way, okay? So what we can do is now, is we can do special pets dot for each. And what does for each take as its only argument? It takes another function. And I will define this function on the fly. I will not make it a name. I will not put it outside of here. I will make it right here inside of the parentheses for each, okay? So what this function is going to do is it's essentially going to say results dot push, and now, and we have to pass in like a specific pet, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to pass in an interpolated string. So an interpolated string is using the backticks key. The backticks key is on the top left of your keyboard, okay? Right, it's on the same key as the tilde, okay? So the backticks lets you actually make a string, but also write JavaScript inside of this. So the way you can trigger something to write JavaScript is you do money sign, and then open close curly braces. And then anything in here can be JavaScript. This won't be the string 2 plus 2, this will be the string 4 at the end. And then we could say is 4, right? And then this is basically string interpolation, okay? But that's not what we're going to be doing exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to do money sign, open close curly brace, and we're going to say pet dot name. And then we're going to do a space, the space, and then another money sign, open close curly brace, and then we could do pet dot species. Species. Okay, cool. And then we're going to do space is very special. Okay? And we're going to, and this is going to result in one string, except because of string interpolation, pet.name and pet.species will be evaluated to whatever is inside of that object at that point in time in pet. Okay? So what we do now is results should have an array of multiple strings based off of what is inside of each object, right? So at the end, we can just return results.join and pass in a separator as a space. And then what we'll get at the end will be one string with all of those strings that were inside of the results array joined together into one string with a space separating each string. Easy. Easy peasy. We can even do this on one line. Right? So 1, 2, 3. Bam. Bada bing, bada boom. Any questions? Okay. So today is going to be a little bit more complicated to wrap your head around, but we are going to be pretty much going over like the same thing, right? We're going over higher order functions. So yesterday we talked about how we can take functions and pass them into other functions. And the function that takes a function is a higher order function. And the function that's being thrown into another function is a callback, right? So that's what we learned yesterday. And now today, we're going to focus on returning functions from functions, okay? Now this could be very complicated, but let's just do like a really quick example just to show you how it's not really that bad. So let's say I have a function, say hi, and say hi just says console.log hey, okay? And now I'm going to write another function, and this function is going to be called returns func, okay? Returns func takes in a callback, and it returns that callback, okay? Notice how I'm not invoking this. Now I can say down here, let new function equal to returns func invoked with say hi. And now I can say new function, and I can call it down here, and then we will get hey in the terminal. New function becomes says hi. It is the same function. They are the same, okay? When we call new function, if we call this four times, right? We get four heys. There you go. So what's actually going on here? When we declare new function, we're assigning it a value, right? And that value is a function invocation. Returns func is being invoked. So we have to see what return func actually returns, right? And we pass and say hi. So what does returns func do when we call it? It just takes a callback and it just returns that callback. So the return value of return func will be say hi, right? What happens if I did invoke this? We get one hey and then an error. Do me a favor and mute yourselves if you guys aren't muted. Now, why are we getting this error? It's because let's walk through this again and see what happened, right? So when we call returns func here and we pass in say hi, that all remains the same, right? We're calling returns func, passing in say hi. So when we call returns func, callback becomes say hi. Now, what is returns func doing? It's returning callback invoked, okay? When you return something, you have to return one value. A function being invoked is not a value, okay? That's not a value. So what is happening is we have to run whatever this function was to get a return value. And what does this callback return? What is the callback? The callback is say hi. What does say hi return? Nothing. It doesn't return anything, which means that it returns undefined. Because this returns undefined, that means that returns func is returning undefined. So new function is undefined, okay? And we get that hey first of all because when we run this function, say hi is running. So we console.log hey and we see that in the terminal, okay? Any questions on why this does not work? Any questions at all? Okay, so let me put that back to normal and let me comment this out. And let me comment all this stuff out. So that is just returning a function from a function, right? We wrote a function that took in another function and then returned that function. So that means that we could pull this function out and essentially put it in another variable, right? So actually, let's not uncomment everything yet. So, well, let's delete this and let's comment this in. What if say hi was defined in here, right? This no longer takes a callback. This just returns say hi, okay? Does everyone understand how this is exactly the same thing? Right? Now, when we call returns func, what returns func is doing is it's defining say hi inside of it and then returning that, okay? So let's not do this for a second, right? Let's try and call say hi out here. Will we get an error? Yes, we will get an error because of scope. Say hi, I'm trying to call something called say hi in the global scope. Because we're sitting in the global scope, we can only look at the global scope. We can never penetrate down below into a lower scope, which is where the function say hi actually exists, right? So this is always going to throw an error. But since we run returns func and set that return value into this variable new function, we can effectively call say hi outside of the scope. It's like a scope loophole. Do you understand? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? This is sort of like a scope loophole. Even though say hi was defined inside of return func, inside of that scope, if we return that function in returns func, if we return say hi, we can set it to new function and then call a new function like crazy in the local scope, and effectively we pulled out that function and now we could run it in the local scope. Any questions on this? Any questions at all?
I think I'm a little confused about what you covered right before this. How if you invoked say hi, it returns that new function is not a function.
Right.
So could you explain that quickly one more time?
Yeah, I'll explain it again. Sure. So let's just run this once, right? So we're doing this like this, right? So when we hit line 20, this is when we're actually running our functions, right? Because we declare new function, and that's being assigned to returns func invoked. When you declare a variable and assign it to something, it has to be assigned to a value, one value, okay? Now, a function invocation is not a value. Like when a function with an open close parenthesis, when you're running a function, that is not a value. That's like an action, right? So what JavaScript says is, okay, well, we have to assign new function something because you put this equal sign here. Oh, there's a function execution. We have to run this function and see what this returns. Whatever this returns will be what new function is. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense. So now let's run returns func and see what happens. What does returns func do? Line 14, it defines say hi. It defines a function. Cool, that's all it does. And then it returns that function. Okay? What happens if I did that? Wouldn't the same logic exist that happened over here, inside of here? Returns func has to return, when you return something, it has to return one value. It can't return a function invocation. So JavaScript is saying, since this function's running now, JavaScript is saying, okay, well, this function, here's the return key, or what's it returning? A function that's being invoked. Because this function is being invoked, we have to run say hi. And then this will return whatever say hi returns. And what does say hi return? Nada, right? Nothing. It returns undefined because we only have a console login here. If we returned that, then it would return yo yo yo. But whatever, we have yo yo yo, okay? So that means that this is effectively yo yo yo, right? So now since this is returning yo yo yo, we can finally get to see what new function is, because returns func finally returns yo yo yo, because that's what say hi returns. But now we were expecting that to be a function. So now when we call this, we get a type error. New function is not a function. That's because it's a string. And if this never returned this, and this just returned say hi invoked, wouldn't you agree that say hi returns undefined because I didn't tell it to return anything? So that means when this returns undefined, new function is essentially undefined.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that made it much clearer.
Yeah, cool. It's a little like convoluted to like talk about, I feel, but it is very straightforward, right? Like if we're running this function, it's just kind of like layering things, unnecessarily layering things, right? Like this would make sense if you try to return undefined from a function and then try to run that return value, then like obviously there's going to be an error. It's just since it's okay, we're going to call this function. What does this function do? Oh, it calls another function that's defined inside of it. It's just making it a little bit more complicated, but the whole principle is still, I think, very like basic, you know? Like you can't actually run another function. And the whole difference is those parentheses. If I don't include those parentheses, then I'm going to return the entire function. So if I'm returning the entire function, doesn't new function just become an entire function? And like I said, this is kind of like a loophole around scope, because that function that new function becomes was defined inside of return func. But now I'm pulled that out basically, and I can use that in global scope. Any other questions on this? Cool. So now the last thing, yeah, that's right, we're on the last thing. The last thing I have to talk about is something called closure, okay? Closure is actually kind of like the same thing that I just said, right? It's kind of simple to wrap your head around. No, actually no. It's simple, like the principle is simple. It's like, okay, fine, I get that. But the whole idea is a little like convoluted as well, okay? So closure basically says that a function that is defined inside of here, like an inner function. So if we're dealing with an outer function and an inner function, just like returns func and say hi, right? Let me make two new functions over here, okay? The hell am I doing? So I can't say my name, and then here I'll say let name equal Marco, and then over here I'll say function say hi, and then I'll say right, and then I will return say hi. So then we do, so this is going to be set equal to say my name, invoke. So this is kind of the same thing, right? However, there is one distinct difference, and that is closure, okay? So what closure is that closure essentially means that an inner function, like say hi, still has access to variables that were declared inside of the outer function after the outer function has finished running, okay? So if I say hi Marco and I invoke that, what I get is hi Marco. And you might say like, okay, yeah, that's I get that. But think about this. This is actually a little complicated, right? Because let's run through this whole thing again, right? When JavaScript reads our page, we hit line 28 and we see that we're declaring a variable, a constant, say my name. And what say my name is doing, and say my name, and say my name is going to be assigned to an anonymous function. Does that make sense? So we don't do anything yet. Then we hit line 36. Line 36, we declare another variable, high markup. And that is going to be assigned to a function being invoked. So like I just went over, a function being invoked is not a value. But since we put this equal sign here, high Marco has to be assigned one value, right? So we have to run say my name. When we run say my name, let's see what happens. We declare name and set it equal to a string markup. Then we define a function say hi. Then we return say hi. That's it. Say my name has officially finished running, okay? It is done running, finite, okay? Now when we hit line 38 over here, we call high Marco. What is high Marco? The return value of say my name. And the return value of say my name is this function that was inside. And I told you that that was a loophole around scope, right? Now I can call that function out here. But when I call it out here, where is name outside of the global scope? It's not there. It still has access to that name variable after say my name finished running on line 36. That name variable is and always will be imprinted inside of the say hi function, okay? Because when it was defined, in that point in time, name was Marco. And that's essentially what Clojure is all about.
So, sorry, can you explain line 38 again?
Yeah. So line 38 is we're calling a function called high Marco, right? And what is high Marco?
High Marco.
Which function is this? It's say hi,
which function?
Right? It's say hi, right?
Say hi.
Because high Marco is whatever say my name returns. And say my name returns what? Say hi. Right?
Say.
Yeah. So
okay.
high Marco is that function. High Marco is say hi. So say hi, what does that do? It console.logs hi name. Right? So we're actually running this function outside of here in the global scope, but even though this name variable was declared over here, and we exited this function, say my name, after line 36. So on line 38, high Marco, we still get that Marco in here.
Okay, but just in case, what if we didn't have line 38? Would it come out differently?
No, nothing would happen, right? Nothing happens. Like if I console.log hi Marco, like what is this thing? It's just a function, right? It's the function say hi. So nothing happens because what does say my name actually do? It just returns a function. It doesn't log anything, right? Like we could put some consoles in here. So we see that say my name started running and it finished running. But we don't actually do anything with this inner function until we call it again out here. And as you can see, say my name finished running, and then we got high Marco.
Okay, I see.
Right? It's not like too complicated. It's just kind of hard to talk about, right? Like, this is essentially the same thing as before up here, except now I just added a variable. However, that variable is not defined inside of say hi. It is defined inside of say my name. And the point I'm trying to make is that say hi still has access to that. later, over here. Because hi Marco is say hi. And this is what I mean by like a loophole, right? I kind of just broke all the rules. Over here, like if this returned, if say hi returns name, then essentially something that I thought was secret to say my name, gets pulled out into the global scope, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What would happen if we would invoke say my name function on line 38 and not run line 39 through line 41?
Well, if we don't run this, right? Well, like we don't run any of this, if we just call
Right.
it.
Right.
So what does say my name do?
Console log.
The console log is this.
Yeah, right now it's console log on line 29 and assign marker
To name.
to variable name on the line 30, and also run the function on line 31.
Are we running the function? Or are we just defining it?
I'm sorry, defining it.
Exactly. We're just defining this function. So nothing actually happens here, and none of this code gets read, right? And then we console.log this on line 35, and then we just return say hi. So what happens here?
So, but
oh, my bad. What happens here is nothing.
Right.
We just get the
yeah, so if we run say my name on line 38, we're not running say hi on line 31. We
No.
just define.
Because it's just because what say my name is doing is it's returning say hi, right? So how do you like take advantage of return values from functions? We store them in variables. So now that we have this return value inside of a variable, hi Marco, we can run that out here, and then we can get the return value from that inner function and pull it out and store it in here, and then I can use it later with whatever I want.
Now it all makes sense, right?
Now it makes sense, right?
Yep.
So this is kind of like I said, a loophole for scope. I took out this secret variable that I defined specifically for the say my name function, and I now have that in the secret name variable in the global scope, and I can give it to everybody.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so now we're going to go over some slides. It's going to be the same thing as basically what I just did. So the slides, what we're just going to be talking about is returning functions from functions and closure. So we know that functions can return values, right? Like this function returns a string, just returns a string, I am a string, and then we capture that in returned value. And then we console.log returned value, and we see I am a string, right? Everyone's good? Good. In the previous unit, we learned that functions are like any other value in JavaScript. So if functions can return values, and functions are values, then functions can also return other functions. So here we have a function greetMe, console.log hi. Then we have a function getGreeter, and it just returns that greetMe function defined over here. Then we call getGreeter and assign its return value into this function greeter, okay? We console.log type of greeter, it's a function. We console.log greeter, it's that function greetMe. And then we call greeter and we get hi. And notice that we're not returning the function. Notice that we are returning the function without calling it, okay? We're not calling it. Does everyone understand why we see hi over here? Any questions on that? what if we did invoke this? We get a nasty error. First, we see hi, because when we do invoke greeter over here, what is actually being run? What is being run? Well, okay, excuse me. What is actually, this hi happens on line 9. When we define greeter and set it equal to get greeter invoked, what does that mean? We have to see what get greeter is returning. Get greeter returns greet me invoked. So we have to see what greet me invokes. We have to see what greet me returns. Greet me, console.log hi, we see the hi, and then it returns undefined. So this is undefined, so get greeter returns undefined. So greeter, type of greeter is undefined, greeter itself is undefined, and then we have greeter is not a function. Any questions on this? Any questions on this? Okay. So, like I showed you, we can also declare that function greetMe inside of getGreeter and then return it within getGreeter, right? So, and we have the same result. So greeter is in itself that function greetMe. Okay. And we can also return anonymous functions too. So I didn't show you this, but like, as you can see on line 3, return, and then we have an arrow function. And you can do that, that's fine. And you don't have to use arrow functions, you can use the function keyword too, without a name. That's fine. And returning anonymous functions like that is totally okay. Same spiel. Any questions on that? Cool. So what if our returned function takes a parameter? So as you can see, now we are returning on line 3 an anonymous function using the function keyword. However, that function takes a parameter name, and then we console.log hi name. So we we say let greeter is now going to be equal to get greeter invoked, okay? And then greeter, we pass in Mary, pass in Rosalind, and then pass in nothing. So we get hi Mary, hi Rosalind, and hi undefined. Because greeter is that anonymous function defined on line 3, right? And that takes a name. So on line 12, when we call it without a name, what will name be? What is a parameter when you don't give it an argument? When you don't give it a value? It's undefined. Any questions on that? Okay. Before we talk about closure, let's review how scope works with nested functions. Inner functions can access variables defined in outer functions, right? So when we call says hi inside of greeter, what does says hi do? It console.logs hi name, and name is defined over here on line 7 inside of greeter, not inside says hi. So what scope does is it says, okay, I have to look at my own scope first. So JavaScript looks at its own scope, says hi scope. It does not find anything that is called name. So it goes one scope up. It never goes down. There is nothing down in this case, but if there was, it does not go down. Then it looks up, and we find name inside of the greeter scope, right? So that's why we still see hi Mary over here. Now closure is the fact that in an inner function can still access values defined in the outer function even after the outer function is finished running. And that's just like a cold hard fact. You're going to have to get used to it. This has its uses. I can't really think of one right now. It's more like, this is more like advanced programming. Not advanced, but like advanced for you guys. But you just have to know that this is something that occurs, and you have to like realize the difference. Like, it should be weird that it does happen, right? Because that function has finished running, right? Console.log getGreeter is running. We define name. Console.log getGreeter is finishing, and then we return an anonymous function. GetGreeter is done, and we put that return value, that anonymous function, inside of a greeter. And then when we call greeter, we still see hi Mary. That like shouldn't happen, right? That doesn't make any sense because Mary is defined inside of getGreeter, and getGreeter isn't running anymore. So how can we possibly access that value? Closure. That's why. When we defined that anonymous function and immediately returned it, name had a value. Name is imprinted inside of that function, right? It was defined inside of getGreeter. So, because of closure, we have access to Mary. Any questions on that? Okay. So what if getGreeter took a parameter, right? So like before, when we passed Greeter Rosalind, now we actually have to pass getGreeter Rosalind. And as you can see, this is still closure. It's still working the same way. Because if you remember back when you guys were learning about scope, anything that's, any parameter is locally scoped to that function, right? So name is still in the local scope of getGreeter. So when we pass in Rosalind to getGreeter, what is name? Name is Rosalind. In that point in time, name is Rosalind, right? So when we return that function, that anonymous function, when it's accessing name, when it's referencing name, Rosalind has been imprinted on it, and then we see in the terminal, hi Rosalind. It is the same process, right? Instead of saying let name equals Rosalind on line in between line 2 and 3, we're just leaving it up to the user now. So when we say function getGreeter name, when we call getGreeter, we have to pass it that name. And it can be whatever the user says, right? Any questions on that? Okay. What if both functions took parameters? So let's say we have function getGreeter name1, and then we return function name2 console.log hi name1 meet name2, right? So we see hi Mary meet Rosalind. Because on line 8, when we say define greeter and we set it equal to getGreeter, we pass in Mary. So name1 is now Mary, okay? So when we return that function, what greeter actually is, where on line 4 we reference name1, Mary is imprinted upon this function. Mary is referencing that value name1. But on line 9, when we call a greeter, getGreeter has finished running, right? So if we try to console.log name1 on line 10, we'd get a crazy error. However, when we call a greeter and we pass in Rosalind, we get hi Mary meet Rosalind, because greeter is that anonymous function, and that anonymous function takes a parameter name2. So when we pass in Rosalind on line 9, name2 effectively becomes Rosalind. And before, when we called getGreeter with Mary, name1 was Mary, right? So when we run greeter, we get hi Mary meet Rosalind. Any questions? This is exactly the same thing that we just showed you, that I just showed you. It's just now it's now we just used variable naming to make functions more clear. So when I say instead of greeter, I say let introduce Mary to, and then I say it's getGreeter Mary. So now when we call introduce Mary to, we say introduce Mary to Dorothy. So we say hi Mary meet Dorothy. Introduce Mary to Albert, hi Mary meet Albert. The same thing with Rosalind, right? Introduce Rosalind to Barbara, hi Rosalind meet Barbara, and so on and so forth. Introduce Rosalind to Isaac, hi Rosalind meet Isaac. Same thing, same function. Really delete this slide, it has no purpose. And that is all she wrote about closure, okay? Any questions about anything at all? Because otherwise, we're done. Also, if there are no questions about anything, let me just stress to you the importance of coming to tomorrow's lecture, okay? Because recursion is pretty tough. and confusing and annoying and hard and stupid, and no one likes it. So just come and we'll get through it together. And definitely stick around for the workshop because you're going to need practice with recursion. That is 100% going to be on the admissions tests or whatever. Okay. So come tomorrow. And if you guys got friends that are in this class that just aren't coming, just tell them to come tomorrow, but are still like doing everything. Just tell them to come. Yeah. So